The Fogbound Isle. The ferry horn groaned, a mournful sound swallowed by the thick fog. It clung to the water, to the weathered docks, to everything. Welcome to Port Haven, they called it. I called it a mistake the moment I stepped off the boat. The air tasted of salt and something else, something ancient and rotten. The few faces I saw were etched with a weariness that went beyond hard work. They looked haunted. I'm Sarah, by the way, marine biologist, came here to study some anomalies. I should have stayed on the mainland. The only place open was a dimly lit tavern called the Mariner's Rest. The wood was dark, the air thick with the smell of stale beer and unspoken secrets. A lone figure sat nursing a drink at the bar. He was old, his face a roadmap of wrinkles carved by the sea and something darker. Silas, they called him. He looked like he'd seen things he couldn't unsee. "New blood," he rasped, his voice like gravel. "Port Haven doesn't take kindly to outsiders." My research was unsettling. The marine life was mutated, twisted in ways I couldn't explain. The water itself seemed wrong. The fog was always there, a constant presence, watching. I started having nightmares, dreams of things rising from the depths. Silas found me on the beach one morning, staring out at the fog-choked sea. "The deep ones are restless," he said, his eyes filled with a terrible knowledge. He told me stories, tales whispered in hushed tones for generations, stories of an ancient entity, a being of immense power that slumbered beneath the island. It fed on fear, on despair. The disappearances, the madness, it was all connected. The fog was its breath, the sea its domain. Port Haven was built on a grave. "They say it can influence the minds of men," Silas said, his voice barely a whisper. "Drive them to do unspeakable things." I tried to dismiss it as folklore, as the ramblings of an old man. But the evidence was mounting. The mutations, the fog, the growing sense of dread. It was all too real. The townspeople were changing. Their eyes held a vacant stare, their movements jerky and unnatural. They spoke in whispers, their words laced with a chilling devotion. Silas warned me to leave. "Get off this island while you still can," he pleaded, "before it claims you too." I couldn't leave. Not yet. I had to understand. I had to find a way to stop it. I started digging, researching the island's history, searching for any clue, any weakness. The library was filled with old texts, forbidden knowledge. I found references to rituals, to sacrifices, to a pact made long ago. The entity demanded tribute. It demanded obedience, and Port Haven had been paying the price for centuries. The fog grew thicker, more oppressive. The townspeople gathered in the town square, their faces illuminated by flickering torches. They were chanting, their voices a low, guttural drone. Silas tried to stop them, but they were too far gone. Their eyes were empty, their minds consumed. They dragged him towards the sea. I watched from the shadows, paralyzed with fear. They were going to offer him as a sacrifice. I couldn't let them. I ran towards the crowd, screaming, trying to break through their ranks. They turned to me, their eyes filled with a chilling malice. They grabbed me, their grip like iron. They dragged me towards the sea, towards the waiting darkness. As I struggled, I saw it. A shape rising from the depths, a monstrous form shrouded in fog and seaweed. Its eyes burned with an ancient, malevolent intelligence. Silas looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. "It's too late," he whispered. "It's already won." But I refused to give up. I remembered something I had read in the library, a passage about a counter-ritual, a way to sever the entity's connection to the island. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was the only chance we had. I fought against my captors, kicking and screaming, trying to break free. I managed to reach into my bag and pull out a vial of a chemical compound I had developed to combat the mutations. It was a long shot, but it was worth a try. I hurled the vial at the entity, hoping to disrupt its form, to weaken its hold on the island. The vial shattered against its skin, releasing a cloud of iridescent gas. The entity roared in pain, its form flickering and distorting. The townspeople recoiled, their chanting faltering. The fog began to dissipate, revealing the sky for the first time in what felt like an eternity. Silas seized the opportunity. He grabbed a torch from the ground and hurled it at the entity. The flames engulfed its form, driving it back into the sea. The entity shrieked, a sound that echoed across the island, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage. The fog lifted completely, revealing a sky washed clean by the storm. The townspeople collapsed, their minds slowly returning to normal. Silas and I stood on the beach, watching the sea, waiting for the entity to return. But it didn't. Not that day. We knew it was still out there, lurking in the depths, waiting for its chance to reclaim Port Haven. But for now, we had won. I left Port Haven the next morning, the ferry horn a welcome sound this time. I looked back at the island, shrouded in a thin veil of mist. I knew I would never forget what I had seen, what I had experienced. The entity was still out there, and it would always be a part of me. But I also knew that I had made a difference. I had helped to save Port Haven, at least for now. And that was enough. Years later, I still have nightmares, dreams of the fog, of the sea, of the entity rising from the depths. I still feel its presence, a cold, malevolent energy that lingers in the back of my mind. I know it's waiting, biding its time. And I know that one day it will return, and when it does, Port Haven will be ready. Or at least I hope it will be.